Hello, how are you? Welcome along. Got a spoken word session from the award-winning photographer Cambridge Jones. And photographer Cambridge Jones, extraordinary. What are you doing? Doing selfies? Oh, no, not me. Please don't take a photograph of me. But we were just listening to that trail and saying, it's been so emotional, hasn't it, that whole D-Day?
Completely. I mean, and it just sort of crept up on me. I thought, I kind of didn't really tune into it, and then suddenly this moment happened, and I thought, my God, we owe these people an awful lot. And I think it was something about seeing them. It's a terrible thing to say, isn't it? But when people get to a certain age, and you suddenly think they're not engaged fully, and yet they've given us everything we've got. It was really, it hit me very hard.
No, it did. I think lots of people as well, and very emotional. And to see those men, and that bloke who escaped.
I know. And then
from the home.
I saw those photos of him on the ferry, coming back having breakfast, looking so happy. I'm surprised he wanted to go back. Really.
I know. My dad said about that. He said he cried when he heard about it, but at the same time he felt it was a good story. He said, and we don't get any good news anymore. And this bloke, it was a bit of good news that he'd gone there.
The other funny one was I bumped into Sophie Rayworth, the news presenter, and she'd had to get to wherever she was going, and the security had fenced her off. So she ended up getting a bike, riding it along the edge of the beach, putting it on the back of some Dutch people's truck, and then finally got to where it was. And so she was a bit like the same guy, trying to get there to cover it.
And that poor bloke who had his medal stolen.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Oh, that was awful as well. So whoever you are, I don't like you. Whoever did that, absolutely awful. So here you are, and in full swing as ever. What your most recent piece of work?
Well, at the moment, I've got a new exhibition and book out on 26 characters. They're all children's authors. It's for the Story Museum in Oxford. And it's an odd thing to say, but I've done the 26 portraits, and in each one, I've got them to dress as their favourite character from childhood. And
so what are you dressed up as?
So I'm dressed as Biggles, but the only reason for that is because I knew I needed something that my assistant could snap very quickly at the end of the Shirley Hughes shoot, because we weren't going to have a lot of time. I thought, you know what, you put bigger goggles and a hat on, you're there. But no, the thing I was going to say that's odd for me to say is that actually if you've got kids and you take them there, it's an extraordinary thing to see my work. It's actually been done by the Doctor Who designer and opera designers. So you go into a room for each portrait. So it's not just going to see my photographs. You go through a wardrobe, and suddenly literally you walk through the clothes.
It's like Narnia.
It is, and you're in Narnia, and you've got Holly Smale dressed as the White Witch, and then suddenly you're on a ship, and you've got Philip Pullman. And I shouldn't be telling you all these people, because part of the fun is finding who's dressed as what.
Just don't tell us anymore.
Yeah.
Don't. So is it in a normal gallery, or?
It's a new museum in Oxford. They've taken over the whole sorting office that used to be. If you imagine in the old
days, a mailbox place.
Yeah, when the people sent letters, the size of the sorting office you had to have in the centre of Oxford was huge, and it's almost like an Oxford College quad. And they've taken over the whole thing, and it's just going to be this museum for stories.
So did they ask you, or was it your idea?
They came to me and said, would you be interested in doing 26, well, they didn't say 26, but a series of all the great children's authors. And I sort of said, yes, but maybe we should come up with something a bit different. And between us, we came up with the idea that if we asked them, basically, if you asked them who their favourite character was as a child, you somehow released there's a horror. If I come to you now and say, "Can I take your portrait, Janice?" You'll go, "Really? I don't think I'm already feeling."
Well, you did that. You took pictures of them. No.
I'm about to tweet that, but you interrupted me by suddenly making me go live. But that'll happen the minute you turn around.
Swine.
But no, there is something about being photographed which is horrible. There just is, and pointing a camera. The minute if I had a camera here and I picked it up, But I said to them, look, if we say to them, who was your favourite character as a child, and we're going to get the Royal Shakespeare Company or the National Theatre to come in with costumes, makeup, and suddenly you are Long John Silver, or you are Peter Pan, and it just released them, and suddenly these people who, if you think about it, authors aren't the most public of people. They're not
like you.
Yeah, like me, actually. Although I don't particularly mind it, but they do. And suddenly when they were in character, they were just off. All I had to do was just go click, 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 and it was brilliant. It was like they were released. They were kids again.
It's basically funny, isn't it? Because I remember my mum and dad were so cross, because the NME asked me many years ago, to pick a character that I'd like to be photographed as, and I picked Quasimodo. They were very upset. Could you not have picked something
Did you
pretty?
do it?
Yes.
Right, that's a Google. That's...
But I felt happier doing that than trying to be, you know, some sex pot or whatever. And I love Quasimodo.
Well, if I'd have asked you to do this, would you? If I'd have said, right, who would be your favourite character from childhood, growing up, from your, you know, a book or something, would you have known?
What would I pick now? Do you know what? See, Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
You see, or one of the Hardy Boys. Well, that's not right. I mean, a
One of the Hardy
Boy.
Boys.
But Nancy Drew.
It's progress from Quasimodo, I can tell you.
So, did anybody say no?
No, they didn't. And I think it's that thing of not being asked to be yourself. So suddenly it was free. It was giving them permission.
Well, then you don't have to worry, do you?
Yeah,
You're not
and
doing
suddenly
all
it's
the,
fun, and it's like,
yeah.
ooh, hang on. And in a sense, the first question they think about isn't will I do it? It's who would I be? And then once they've answered that question, they're in. It's a really interesting. I advise all photographers out there not to ask people if they want to be photographed, but to ask them who they liked when they were a kid.
So, did you have a wish list?
No, it wasn't really for me to choose because I think they wanted to appeal to quite a variety of younger people. One of their ideas is that stories, there's a danger that stories become academic and school-based and people get put off reading. So they want to keep stories fun and alive and interesting. And so they create a whole section from, say, Holly Smale, who wrote this book, Geek Girl, through to Philip Pullman, who wrote all the trilogy, which were extraordinarily kind of depth and complex. So all sorts of things. And all I had to do was turn up each time. It was amazing. There was one. I'm trying to think who it was. Geraldine McCaughrean, I think, who needed a white horse because she was going to play this Greek god, and they were seriously thinking about bringing a white horse into the Story Museum, but luckily they didn't in the end. And if you look at the photograph in the book or in the exhibition, you can look online as well at their stuff. You can see that I've tried to pretend she's on a horse, but there is no horse there.
It must be so exciting for you though, because no 2 days are the same, are they?
It is, but that's the amazing thing about my job. Is that I don't really have to ever put myself on the line, but I get to kind of rub shoulders with all these extraordinary people day after day and step in and out of there. And there's a rather wonderful thing about photography, I think, which is if I get it right, then a very lovely relationship starts between you and I because I've captured the best in you. And I say that without any kind of magic or anything. That's my job. And then I have to show you them and you go, oh, I like that one. And I go, okay, I'll do a print. And a really nice relationship. So it's a very, very lovely job.
It is important, that relationship. I remember, is it Peter Ashworth, photographer? Maybe not your era, but he was...
Rings the bell, I can't think.
But, you know, I've never been comfortable having a photograph taken. And I've got a batch of photographs that were taken in about 1995 that I actually like of me.
Right.
And I think it's because he made me feel incredibly comfortable.
Yeah.
The music was right, you know, the chat and what have you. And I suddenly wasn't doing that grin or pout or whatever. He just captured me.
Yeah.
As I was loving the sounds that I was listening to.
Is your memory of him and that relationship
brilliant?
And it's a very powerful thing. But I do think photography is actually all about people, portraiture. So I'm actually not very technical. People always come up to me and going, "What camera?" I have no idea. I don't know. I'm not very interested in cameras. I take pictures of people, and it's a very.
So you're not one of these that goes, "Oh, I need a DS4
No, I
G
couldn't care
with a
less.
diddly what's
If it takes pictures and the light's right and you're right, and so most of my job is to come into the portrait studio or wherever we are and just chat to you. And the oddity of that, in a sense, is that all I'm doing is I'm sort of taking your mind off the fact you're being photographed in order to capture you at certain moments.
So if technically it doesn't, you know, you're saying actually as long as I just take a great photograph, can you say to people that you can do it on your phone?
Yeah, I really do. Particularly, they've got to the point now where there's a difficulty here. I mean, it slightly depends what you're going to do with it. So. And it's not just to do with the number of pixels, it's to do with how big the pixels are and all sorts. So, but you can't blow up an phone picture
Yeah.
or a Samsung picture up to a billboard size. So if I'm being commissioned to produce a movie poster or something, then I have to use a certain quality. But in principle, and certainly I was thinking about this the other day, the Instagram and stuff has tricked people back into the world where they actually process their photos.
Yeah.
Whereas for a long time you had digital photos, loads of people took them, didn't know what to do with them, didn't do anything to them, and they just got kind of stored or lost. But Instagram, in a funny way, has meant people go back into almost a darkroom environment. They go, oh, I might make it a bit black and white, I might make it darker, I might make it lighter.
Interesting, actually, because I was watching a TV programme the other day where somebody went into a dark room, and I thought, my goodness, does that happen anymore?
Well, very rarely. I mean, very, very sadly. I just don't get asked to use film now. And worse, if I do use film, the first thing they do is they digitise it. So I think, well, why did I bother with that?
But if you look at certain artists, I mean, I don't know who your favourite photographers are, you know, because I know my other half loves Man Ray.
Yes.
Or, you know, I mean, when you think of the technique and the...
I know. And all that's... But the oddity is you can do... Because I was taught and spent all my time in a darkroom. The oddity is, if you use a computer now, you're essentially doing the same thing you did in a darkroom. But what I don't understand is if you're a new photographer learning it for the first time on a computer, and I'm sure they'll be as good, if not better, but the sensibility must be entirely different, because I sort of feel like I'm processing in a darkroom, even though I'm not. But they don't. They must feel like they're processing on a computer. And I don't know to what degree they're referencing old stuff. And no, you could get me going for hours on that. I really don't know.
You mentioned Sophie Wayworth before, and many years ago, Sophie and I had a slight contretemps on breakfast telly.
Oh my God.
Over, she was saying, you know, you can't have computers in music. It's not right. And I went, no, it's another instrument. It's an instrument. You have to, like, accept it's, you know, the equivalent of a guitar or whatever. You just use it. No. But the same is said for photography, surely.
I think that's absolutely right. That ultimately, I don't like saying it because I know that a whole ton of people will come down on me. But that is actually my belief, that I'm not really worried about whether it's a box Brownie or a Hasselblad or a kind of large format camera or a really nice digital camera. I am genuinely interested in the process and the person, as long as you know what to do with it.
That's it. Well, it's the person behind it.
Yeah. There's a lovely thing Litchfield used to say. He used to say, you're not looking at the subject, you're not looking at the photographer's picture of the subject, you're looking at the subject's reaction to the photographer. And I think that's very true.
No, I believe that. We've asked you to pick some music. Johnny Cash, I've walked the line. Why?
Why?
Why not?
Well, I had my real parents and then I had adopted parents. This was my real parents' song when they got married, and it was then my song when I got married to my wife. And then I found myself...
Was it because of...
Well, partly that, but I don't think we ever quite clocked that. We sort of chose it and then realised it was theirs. And then the story gets even more extraordinary, that I now work in Nashville an awful lot with country musicians, and I'm now working with John Carter Cash and Roseanne Cash, and the whole thing has been like a fairy tale for me. From a slightly tragic beginning, because here is a song that was the wedding of two people who lasted about 18 months together, of which I was the result, and it all went horribly wrong. But there's that sort of lovely follow-through, so it's all, I can't hear it, but kind of feel emotional.
Theme, it's like a soundtrack. Oh, Johnny Cash, and I walk the line, and my guest is a photographer extraordinaire, award-winning photographer, Cambridge Jones. And you're royal.
I'm not royal.
No, you're not royal, but you have done royal.
Oh, royal, yes. No. I just
You
have to
hang in
double
royal
check
quarters?
for a minute then. Yeah, no, I have. I've done quite a lot of them on and off. And the extraordinary thing about royalty is they're not... if you think about a job where you're photographing celebrity quite a lot, whether it's actors, politicians, musicians, they are part of the deal is they'll give you something because that's the deal. They're doing it for some purpose. But the oddity about royalty is they're there through no particular thing, and they don't need to do that. And it's quite disconcerting the first time you meet it. And actually it changes. I've been around the younger ones and William and Harry, and they've obviously got some of their mother in them, but there is definitely something about the Queen and Prince Charles which just doesn't need to give. You take, as it were, you take the picture.
But can you have polite chit-chat with these people? You know, can you kind of go,
Yes,
You all right today?
up to
or
a point.
How's it going? Do
And
you watch
again,
Corrie?
I think it goes through the generations. So, but yeah, no.
You must see the change then,
You do.
as you
You
say.
see it hugely. I've tried to have chit chat, particularly with Prince Charles, and sort of some. It goes all right for a while, and then you get this feeling that the people around think you should move on and take some.
It's like, just do it
Yeah.
and leave.
Well, your job is to take a picture, sir. Thank you.
Have you done everybody that you want to do?
Well, that's very interesting. You just before we came on air, then you mentioned Elvis Costello, who I've always loved and have never photographed. And the other one was Mandela, who I got a letter from, which I will forever keep and probably frame, asking me to do some work with him and Bill Clinton, bizarrely. And
Wow.
it never happened. And then he died. So that was tragic. And he probably, like many photographers, he'd be the person I would most like to have.
What you should do is talk to Elvis, and then you can get Bill Clinton as well. Because Elvis Costello, I don't know if you've seen it, the most amazing chat show he did on American telly.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Oh, it's fantastic. I got the box set.
Can
I was,
okay.
Yeah, I was given the box set by Jill, his manager, and it's wonderful. It really, really is. And one of the programmes, he talks to Bill Clinton, and Bill plays the sax.
Oh my God.
He's the greatest music TV interviewer I've ever seen.
Is that right? Oh, well, you'll be lending that one shortly.
Well, I shall ask. You should take a photograph of him. I'll talk to Jill. But he's just a sublime.
Because has it been on here or not? I've never seen it.
It has actually. It ended up on Sky Ops.
Okay. Probably just before I got Sky.
Probably. When you're in your Freeview stage.
Yeah.
Another tune, Indigo Girls. Why?
So this one. This is sort of harder to explain. There's less of a logical reason. I studied philosophy at Oxford, which was a mistake being called Cambridge, but nevertheless. And one of the oddities of that is you sort of you're forced to read all these great thinkers and these great writers and their explanation of what the world is about and what life's about. And you realise after 3 years of this being fed to you, force-fed to you, that none of them have answered it or got a solution. And then I heard this song by the Indigo Girls that basically it kind of makes a bit of a joke of this. They go and see the philosopher and they go and see the Buddha and basically the chorus is all about this philosophy of as just being a bit closer to fine. Yeah, that's all you need to be is fine. And I think that's such a wonderful philosophy that you don't need to seek happiness or world peace or whatever. I mean, all of those things would be great, obviously, but in a sense, if your philosophy is much more simple, and that's the central theme of this song, is just to kind of be happy with an ordinary okay life, and I think that's very strangely deep.
Indigo Girls and Closer to Fine, and my guest is Cambridge Jones. He chose that. And your website is
CambridgeJones.com.
Jones.com. And a photographer to chat to tonight. How brilliant, my favourite hobby. I never go anywhere without my camera, as you can probably guess. And have a look at the selfie. One of the red arrows, Jets. Oh, well, actually, that's not come out, unfortunately. There's the sunset for you to look on.
Are these really yours?
No, not mine. Sylvia, who's got in touch.
Oh, lovely.
And look at those. They're beautiful horses.
Oh,
I mean, not that you can see. Describe them.
The horses?
They're great, aren't
They're amazing. It looks like they're either just been given an electric shock or they're in the middle of a massive row. They're brilliant, though, aren't they? Great photos. They've caught a moment with all the hair spiked up. And are they on the website?
No, Sylvia's just sent them in, but she's honestly always sending photographs of wonderful shots of beaches and her dogs doing whatever and sunsets. She's
They're
very
beautiful,
prolific.
Sylvia. Really
Do you
nice.
take your camera absolutely everywhere with you?
Well, now that's an interesting question. I am a photographer because I took my camera everywhere with me, and then it almost became difficult. But certainly, so being invited anywhere, I stopped taking it. That was the first thing I stopped doing, because suddenly, not only was I expected to take pictures, but they expected to be very good, and they involved me.
Well, that's it, isn't it? People's expectations
of
you.
So I can't just do a quick snap and then give it to them, because I need to make sure it's right.
It's really good.
And then the second thing I noticed I stopped doing was I would really get a sense of slight relief when I went somewhere without the camera, because I was just... You actually look at the world differently as a photographer, I think. And if you don't have the camera, you start... it's slightly odd to try and describe this, but if you got a camera, you're looking at what might make a good picture, and if you haven't, you sort of relax and just look at the big. And some things that look fantastic to the human eye don't really make great pictures, and vice versa. So some little detail that to the human eye just looks like the corner of your lamp could make a wonderful kind of detailed photo. So you kind of have to decide what head you're going to put on that day and where you're going.
Does your partner not find you a pain in the backside? Because I do. Paul and I will go away, right? And then he'll go, well, he'll just suddenly disappear. And I've walked 100 yards on, and I'm looking behind going, where is it? And he's taking, you know, a picture of a corner of a gate or whatever it is. Now I've decided I keep walking. He has to catch up with me. I'm not standing. I'm just like dithering.
But what about, does he also do stuff of you? Like,
oh no, I won't let him.
Because that's how my wife was originally, and then I just took so many that in the end she gave up. So and my children are the same now. They kind of start off like all children, going, "Really, Daddy, stop it." And now they're just so they don't even notice me, and it gives you really nice pictures when people are sort of oblivious.
Oh no.
I'm just going to keep taking them and
there are no
tweeting them.
photographs of me.
There's one I tweeted one about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, I know, and then a mixed tweeted one as well. But I've got a piece of paper in front of my face.
Oh, that's what you were doing. It's all very
just
strange.
Really self-conscious. That's why when Radio 2 introduced the webcam, oh goodness grief!
Oh really? So is that on now? Is that
no,
on?
It's not.
You can tell when it's on. Can you?
They used to have one at Pebble Mill when we started, and the position of it made it look as though you had a bald patch. I looked like a friar. So it's just pointless, absolutely pointless. How do you go though from philosophy to photography? And I have to ask the question: Oxford must help, or not? Is that an assumption?
No, I think you're probably right. Not because of whether you can take a good photo, but who you can take a photo of. Yeah, I think that's true. So I was there with David Cameron for a start, and Boris, and you know, he was older, but he was there, and I'm sure that does make a difference. But in the, I have to say to myself, well, if the photos weren't any good,
it's still got to be good.
Yeah, otherwise then nobody's gonna want you. But how do you go from one to the other? I was taking photographs all the way through it, really. I then went on to RADA, where I took photos at RADA, and they.
To do drama.
Yeah.
What were your entrance pieces?
I did King Lear, Edgar.
Wow.
Poor Tom, you know.
Yeah.
Poor Tom. Yeah. And then I did, I'm from Wales, so I did Under Milk Wood.
Oh, I've just been watching the BBC Under Milk Wood. Have you seen it?
No, I've been told it's brilliant.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's
I haven't seen it.
absolutely fantastic.
I did Blind Captain Cat all the women out this morning in the sun. But I was even then I was taking pictures, and I remember them thinking, is he real, or is he doing an article with Sunday Times undercover? You know, because he keeps just going around taking pictures. And the other funny thing was, when we first arrived, they sit you all down in a big hall and they say, right, what part do you really want to play? And everyone's going around going, Othello and King Lear. And I remember they got to me and I went, James Bond. And they never really took me seriously from then on.
They're not going to, are they?
So that was my classical training was slightly. But I did manage to complete it. And I did Soldier briefly with Robson and Jerome.
No.
Yeah. And I was playing the drums when they...
Is that when you had a number one?
Yeah.
Ah!
Very good. So that was then, and we just filmed it in the episode, and I didn't realise they were going to release it, and they released it, and suddenly somebody phoned me up and said, "You're number one." I said, "What?" And then they cut the video, which I don't know whether you remember, they did a brief encounter, but for about 24 hours I was in the video, but I hadn't actually played the drums, I just mimed it. So by the time they cut me out because they wanted all the royalties, and they made this brief encounter. No,
gosh.
Yeah.
Do you know what, though? I mean, you still have time to be James Bond.
Yes.
So you do.
Okay.
There's no reason why you couldn't.
I like your support, Janice. Let's start the campaign here.
Why not?
Yeah.
Because, Daniel's not going to be doing it forever.
That's true.
I reckon one more.
Yeah.
And then they need somebody else.
Yeah.
Why not you?
I think Damien Lewis might get there before me.
Do you think so?
He might.
Idris,
yeah, that would be good.
possibly. Who knows? Right, Elvis Costello. And a good year for the Roses. Why?
Well, I suppose it slightly ties back to do you remember when Almost Blue, the album, came out? So I was into Elvis Costello pretty much from the beginning. And then he brought out this album, and there was a sticker on the front that said, "Narrow-minded people need not buy this album," or something. Or "Narrow-minded people may be offended." And I played this country music album just back to back and time after time, and it opened me to another world. And to find myself 10, 20 years later, whatever it is, working with all the great Nashville and some of the people that he was singing the songs of. I just remember it was so exciting to me when that was in the charts, and it just opened a whole new world of music, which I suppose it was meant to do. I'm sure I've heard him say that since, but it really did for me.
We are loving that. Elvis Costello and A Good Year for the Roses, and Jason Long at Cambridge Jones, up late revising for my final philosophy exam, and being fine is definitely the best philosophy. Now, two things. First, we would love you to do a spoken word.
Yes.
And you've opted for what?
Well, in the new exhibition, in the new book, I've interviewed each of the characters, and I've asked them about why they chose a character or why they were right.
That's a weird one, isn't it? Because normally, you can take photographs and you can build up a relationship, but you're not actually documenting it.
Yeah, although oddly enough, my career has largely been built around not just doing a portrait.
Yeah.
So I've had their favourite piece of music.
Yeah.
Or I did an exhibition once where they were asked. So it was like creative people, artists and actors, and it was, I'd ask Anthony Hopkins why he'd become an actor, or I'd ask Eddie Izzard why, whatever it was, and you'd hear their voice. Saying, "Oh, I became an actor because Richard Burton was on stage," and whatever it was.
You sounded just like Eddie Izzard then.
But there's always another, and the reason I've done that out of interest is that I think the world has become so proliferated with photography that it needs to somehow be tricked to stop and look at it. So I've always had another gimmick.
So it draws.
Yes, you've also basically got to stop and look at it. And so my very first exhibition, you had to put headphones on in front of each portrait and hear their favourite song. There's always been something. But in this one, I got a recording of them being asked something, and I thought it might be nice. They gave an amazingly array of different reasons why stories mattered and why a story museum was important and all the rest of it. But the one I thought might be lovely to read, if this fits the bill, was Michael Morpurgo, who gave a slightly surprising answer, given that he's one of the most respected writers around, and he'd written War Horse and all the rest of it. So should I just go straight into it?
If you would.
So I'll just quickly explain. I'll give a little bit of my question and then his answer. So I asked him whether he read much, and he said, "I've never read much, not nearly as much as I should. I should read more fiction. I never got into the habit of it, which is why I'm so keen that kids should, because I know it's something I missed." And then I asked him, "Well, why did you become a storyteller if you didn't read much?" Well, there was a practical reason, which I'm not going to disguise. The practical thing I had to do from 3 o'clock until 3:30 every afternoon was to keep 35 year sixes quiet. I was a teacher. I'd been reading other people's stories and it had worked fine. And if I put my heart and soul into the reading, and it was a book I loved, it became a book they loved. And then I ran out of suitable books, and I could feel them shifting and looking out the window and picking their noses, and it wasn't working. And I told my wife, and she said, "Well, why don't you tell one of your own? You know, you're a pretty good liar. Make up a story, try it." So I did. And I learned something very, very quickly in that one afternoon, which was, if you believe in a story yourself, they're going to believe in it, even if it's quite an ordinary story. And if you're telling it or you're writing it, you do it for yourself. You believe in it. You're fascinated by it. You become the characters in the story. And you can see the landscape, feel the landscape, smell the landscape. It has to become real for you, and then you can transfer that to the listener. And I think that's how my storytelling, which I don't really call writing, my story making, has always happened. It's because I'd been fascinated with a subject and got into a story myself. And I just thought that was lovely, because it's like, here is one of our great, great writers, storytellers, saying, A, I didn't read, and B, I just sort of started to feel it. And it's a lovely sort of look into his mind.
And that whole thing of, if you believe in it, and if you do it because you want to, then it's going to come across to...
And do you know what's... well, you know this. Are we allowed to say what you've just been doing? Or not?
Yes, oh yeah.
So you've just been acting, right?
I have.
And in a play, playing, convincing somebody that something's real. And one thing I learned when I trained as an actor is there's no way you're going to convey any sense of meaning or reality if you don't start to believe something of it yourself. If you start saying words while thinking of something else in your head, they don't get it.
But that transfers to loads of things. I remember once going to have my hair cut, and this bloke did my hair really short. And I went, oh, my goodness. And he went, you look great. And I went, well, I like it. And he went, yeah, so you walk out into the street and you go, I look great, and everybody else will think you look great.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than go, oh, walk down the street, hiding. But it is true, isn't it?
I thought you were going to say the opposite. I thought you were going to say, this guy cut my hair really
So
short.
you look awful.
And I turned around and he was reading a book or something. He just wasn't thinking about my haircut.
But it is that total belief. So thank you for that. It's wonderful reading. And the other thing that we've invited you here for is because Radio 2, the whole of the BBC, linking art, colour, music, the whole thing, and celebrating all of this. And we have this idea that I think you can explain. We want everybody to contribute their photographs. You're a photographer. If they come up with a photograph that, sums up this album, I suppose, or this track.
Yeah, as track or an album.
Yeah.
So the idea, was we were trying to, weren't we? We were trying to think of how we could
it's weird,
combine
isn't it?
art
Photography on the radio.
With radio. We want photography on the radio. Come on, everyone. And then we thought, well, if we give you a song title, if we give the listeners a song title, and then they send in what they think best sort of comes to mind. And that can be, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be literal.
It can be abstract or...
If we have a song about letters, we don't need to have lots of pictures of pillar boxes. But it's whatever... and then we can look at and pick a winner, not with a kind of view to a millions of pound prize, but just kind of what we think is the winner of that particular song.
Well, what we're saying is that we're going to play a track now that Cambridge has chosen. And then you just think about it, go into your head and, send us a photograph, come up with an image that you think, sums up this particular track. We're going to put all of them on our Facebook. Every single one will go on the Facebook, but you'll come back next week and we'll have actually selected 3 or 4 that you look
and we'll
really
talk
good.
Through those and then pick
and then set another challenge, maybe.
Set another challenge.
Oh, it goes on. How exciting is this? So what have you picked?
Well, I did deliberately want to pick something that wasn't too easy to just go and get something literal. So I thought that Bob Dylan's Tangled Up in Blue would be very nice.
Well, I think it's a perfect track. And I'll just say, you can think about this now. You can get it in as soon as you like, or you've got a few days. 88291 is the text if you want to send your picture via that. You can email janice.long@bbc.co.uk. You can go on Twitter. That's my personal one. But if you do the personal one, make sure you add at BBC Radio 2. There is, obviously the at BBC Radio 2 one. And, of course, you can do it on Facebook. So, yes, this is what you have to lie back, close your eyes and come up with the images. An interesting guest, and what a lovely voice he is, Cambridge Jones. Still with us, and great choice there.
No, I love it.
That's wonderful. Bob Dylan and Tangled Up in Blue. Yeah, well, it will. It's had a request from my daughter, because she's called Blue. No.
Enough.
But, yes, I mean, it's totally somebody's interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. And the more, creative, the better, I think. Well, it's got to look good.
Yeah, well, exactly. And as I've said, all of those things that you send us, the photographs, whether it's by, email, text, Twitter or Facebook, will go up on Facebook, and then Cambridge will have a look and pick 3 or 4 to talk about next week, and then set you another challenge. I truly appreciate your time.
It's
very,
lovely.
very kind, because I know you're so busy.
Complete pleasure.
Working
Love
with,
it.
incredibly famous people.
Enough.
Thank you, Cambridge Jones. You take care of yourself. BBC Radio 2, online on digital radio, and on 88 to 91 FM.